You've discovered that your ex-partner wants to move to a different part of the country with your child. Can you stop them? I'm Barrister Daniel Barnett, and to answer that question I'm joined by family law barrister Malvika Jaganmohan, who is a barrister at St Ives Chambers in Birmingham. Malvika, what can somebody do if they discover that the other parent is thinking of moving to a different part of the country with their child? Is this sort of thing normally done openly, or is it done more surreptitiously in your experience?
Well, they're not supposed to be surreptitious. If you're successful co-parents, then what you should be doing is telling your former partner that, yes, I'm going to be moving. These are my plans. This is where the children are going to go to school. Have them involved in the decision-making process so that it's not sprung on them at the last minute. They're going to be far more amenable to the move if they've actually been involved in it from the very beginning.
What does a court need to think about when this situation arises?
That is going to vary from case to case. It's very different. For example, if you live in Leicester and your ex-partner is moving, an hour down the road to Nottingham, then that's slightly different if they're moving to Cornwall. And it's very much going to depend on what plans are made for you to have an ongoing, healthy, productive relationship with your child. Is your ex-partner offering you proposals for contact which are very much in the best interests of the child? Those are the sorts of things you have to consider. Just because they're moving, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to undermine your relationship with the children. But it's all about planning. It's all about having an open discussion, and it's all about how your relationship is going to be promoted with your child or children moving forward.
If a court has to decide whether to allow your ex-partner to move, what are the things it will take into account, the specific factors it will take into account when deciding what's in the best interests of the child?
The court's paramount consideration is always the children's welfare, and the factors that feed into that are very much case specific, but the general sorts of factors are, well, what would the impact be on the primary carer if they are denied permission to relocate? What would the impact be on them, and consequently, what would be the impact on the children? What would be the impact on the child's relationship with the parent left behind if the relocation went ahead? What alternatives are there? What kind of contact will they be having instead? Will direct contact be replaced with Skype contact? Is that good enough? It'll consider whether or not the move is motivated by genuine reasons. Is your ex-partner moving because they've got a new job or maybe a new partner, or is it completely motivated by spite and it's all about undermining your relationship with the child? Those are the sorts of things that the court will take into account when deciding what's in the best interest of the children.
Can you give some examples of what sort of continued contact a court might order if one parent moves to a different part of the country?
It's not unusual, for example, for the children to have extended weekends with the parent who's been left behind. And an issue that often arises is who's going to do the travel. If someone's in the north of England and their ex-partner's in the south of England, who's going to do the travel? It tends to be that one parent does travel one way and the other parent does travel the other way. It's generally shared, and that's the sort of agreement that people will reach. But there are lots of creative ways to facilitate contact. We live in a digital world. I know WhatsApp contact and Skype contact doesn't seem very satisfying for younger children. Babies and toddlers are less likely to engage with it than, say, teenagers. But for teenagers, you might find that you get far more out of them in a couple of hours of Skype contact than you would when they're moping around with their PlayStation over the weekend. It's very case specific, it's very child specific, but there are lots of creative ways that contact can be facilitated.
So let's imagine your ex-partner tells you they're thinking of moving to a different part of their country and the plans are at a fairly advanced stage. What's the very first thing you should do?
If they're not willing to engage in discussions with you, if they're going to go ahead without your consent, then you can consider applying to the court for an urgent prohibited steps order. And that's an order which prevents them from doing something such as moving out of the area. Now, generally, if the court does grant that, it will be on an emergency basis, but it will need to be further explored before any final decisions can be made. And that's when all these different factors which play into the children's best interest will come into play. So you can apply for a prohibited steps order. You might not necessarily get it.
Malvika Jaganmohan, thank you so much for joining us. I do have a whole series of other explainer guides, so please do subscribe to the channel, click the subscribe link below, and do like this video as well if you want. I'm Barrister Daniel Barnett. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.